Hi, Carrie Ann.
Hi, Ray. How are you?
Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much.
So, for some viewers, you're probably brand new to them. Let's make sure they know who you are and what your position is with the city and how long you've been with the city.
Mm-hmm. I'm the Director of Libraries and Community Services, and the Department of Library and Community Services does a lot of different things. Obviously, we provide library services, but we also provide recreation services. We work with our Public Works Department on, helping to maintain our parks. We support the Public Art Commission and work with a number of groups throughout the community.
So tell us a little bit more about the new El Gabilan Library.
Okay, well, we'll kind of start with the old El Gabilan Library,
Sure.
which was a structure of about 3,500 square feet, and so it was very, very small for a public library, and I think everyone in Salinas probably knew that from about the time it was built back in the 1960s. And so the city has been looking for ways to try to expand the library over at least the last 20 years or so. And so for the last 2 years, since I've been with the city, we've been working with an architect on a needs assessment and visioning plan for the El Gabilan Library, really trying to explore what the residents need and want for library services in North Arlington. And we had, I believe, over 1,000 people participate in some of our visioning sessions. Wow. and give some really enthusiastic and excited input on what they wanted to see in the El Gabilan Library. So as a result, we came up with a building program for a library that will be around 21,000 square feet. It will be a 2-story library, and it'll be on the same site as the original El Gabilan Library, and probably by the time this segment airs, construction will be underway already, and we hope to be opening in late fall or of 2019 or early January of 2020.
The architect was?
Anderson Brule Architects.
And the construction team and contractor?
Griffin Holdings and Swinnerton are our development team. So they're working on the construction of the library.
Great. So it's quite a jump to go from 3,400 square feet to 21,000. So what does that mean in terms of staffing?
We expect one of the initiatives that we've been working on just over the last year or so is really studying our service models and seeing where we can implement new technology and self-service models so that we can extend the staffing that we have right now to be able to cover a larger building, and also to help our staff, instead of doing kind of those very manual, repetitive, checking books in, checking books out, but they can actually be out there on the floor helping people within the building find materials and use technology. So we really don't expect to be growing the staffing. We certainly expect to, in some of our new community spaces like the Makerspace, Digital Technology Lab, the community rooms, being able to work with a lot of different groups throughout the community to help us implement new programming.
Even though it's going to be 2 stories, how does that work? And what will be on the top floor and what will be on the ground floor?
The first floor of the library, one of the things that we're most excited about is being able to have an expanded children's department, because the children's department in the old library was very, very tiny. It didn't allow for programming to happen within the library, or if we did do a story time program, then basically everything else going on in the library was kind of interrupted. So on the first floor of the library, we will have a brand new children's department that is probably easily the size of that the old building
Wow.
was, just as itself, and it will be zoned by age group. So they'll be able to be an area within the department that is for storytime programming. There'll be areas for your younger children, because obviously library needs of a 3-year-old are very different than the library needs of a 10-year-old. So there'll be zone spaces for young children, for your early elementary school children, and your preteen kids. There'll be computers, there'll be areas for homework help, obviously expanded collections from what we were able to have in the old library. So that'll take up a lot of the space on the first floor. And obviously there's a lot of staffing needs for services to young children. So we will have staff concentrated in that area. There'll also be a separate area for teenagers, and that's also on the first floor of the library. An area for new books. So when families come in, and you may have a couple adults and a teenager and a 10-year-old, they'll all be there on the first floor of the library. The teenager may be in the teen department, the 10-year-old looking for books in the children's department, and mom and dad may be browsing the new books for adults in the new book area. There'll also be a community room on the first floor that can, I think, just chair seating will probably seat up to around 150 people. So we're looking to be able to have increased gathering spaces for the community. So probably the more staff intensive things that are going on are on that first floor. The second floor is more of those folks who are looking for a traditional library that may be a little bit quieter, where they can sit down, read, do some studying. The second floor is really for them. And so there won't be as much need for staff on the second floor. We do have an internet cafe area too.
Oh,
and so
good.
there'll probably be someone helping with computer tasks on that second floor. And then the rest of that second floor is really made up by some programming spaces. We're going to have a maker space, as well as a digital arts computer lab. So obviously those spaces would only be used when there's an event or a class going on in there. So again, probably the more staff intensive areas on that first floor, and the more just being able to relax and be on the second floor. Though we'll certainly have staff on that second floor moving around, being able to help people.
In the meantime, what are you doing about library services through El Gablon while the new structure is being built?
Yeah, well, there is a huge population in North Salinas, and so we really didn't feel like we could just close the library and not offer library services in North Salinas. So we were very fortunate. We started looking around at some different alternatives, and the option that we finally hit on was a space at Northridge Mall. So we opened up the Library Connection at Northridge in July, shortly after we closed the old Gavilan Library. And so it's about a 1,500 square foot facility. So it mostly focuses on being able to offer book checkout, a little bit of computer use. But it's great because it's also right next to the children's area within the mall. So we have the opportunity, we're starting a story time, kind of a music and motion story time, a couple times a month, and so we'll probably be expanding that to some more children's programming space as well. So people who just want to drop by, check out a book, pick up their holds, browse for books with their kids. That's really what that facility is for. And people have been very enthusiastic about it so far. And it's also offered us a whole, I think we've increased new library card issuance from what we were previously doing at El Gavilan. I think we've increased new library cards by over 100%
Wow.
in the new location. So it's getting us, that opportunity at the mall is getting us out in front of people who might not have crossed our paths before. So
Well,
it's been great.
Yeah, that's wonderful news. Right. So you by being the library and community services director, have had a huge influence, I think, in terms of the layout, the programming, what this facility should be. How's it actually stacking up now that all the shouting is over, the design's over, the budget's in place, the bonds have been sold, the structure is going to be built soon. How did it all end up in terms of your original, outlook and vision for what this library could be?
I think we've really been able to do most of what the community expressed that they wanted, because at the end of the day, it's not my library,
Right.
it's not our librarian's library, it's really the community's library. So it was kind of great to sit back and kind of listen to what people wanted in library services, and then see what our architects did with that and translating that into to space. And I think they did a great job of that, and really kind of extending what's inside the library to the space outdoors as well too, because we have some great outdoor learning spaces, and with our great weather here in Salinas, it really allows us to use those spaces pretty much 12 months of the year. So I think we got the majority of what the public wanted. As we were really kind of refining that at the end of the process, there were some things that we had to cut from the budget, and those are things that in the coming months we're going to start working with various foundations, and we welcome individual donors and corporate donors as well. So we hope to be able to put back in some of those things, especially that were outside the library, that we had to cut for budgetary purposes at the end.
So how does El Gavilan compare to the other two libraries the Salinas Library System has?
Well, the Cesar Chavez Library, of course, it was renovated about 5 years ago and expanded and basically kind of doubled in space. And in a lot of ways, we kind of use the Cesar Chavez Library as a model for what people probably would want in the El Gavilan Library too. So as far as collection space and some of the amenities, that kind of thing, it was very helpful. Cesar Chavez Library is used by a lot of families, and we have a lot of kids there after school especially, and on weekends. So I think there'll be a lot of similarities between Cesar Chavez and the El Gavilan Library. The John Steinbeck Library is a little bit different because it is our main library, and it's our largest library at about 30,000 square feet. And it's in the downtown area, so it's not necessarily a neighborhood branch library, though we do have a lot of local patrons who use it as their neighborhood library. But as that downtown library, it's really kind of meant to have some of those special things that not all the libraries have. For example, our local history and archives collection. We hope to be able to build up some programming areas that we don't have right now. It has the Friends of the Salinas Public Library used bookstore within it, and so, but as we're building El Gavilan, we're also thinking about what can happen with the John Steinbeck Library to be able to make that even more of a destination, and to be able to make it that downtown library that it really needs to be. So we'll probably be kicking off some fundraising projects for that, and trying to envision the future of what that library really can be, because it's a great building.
Right.
And it really can, I fully believe it can become a destination for not only Salinas residents, but maybe Monterey County residents.
So, how are the schools, if at all, working with you with the new El Gavilan? Will there be new partnerships?
There certainly will, but one of the things, because we talk about building new library buildings, which is wonderful, but one of the things that we realize too is that not everyone in Salinas, especially not every kid, is going to have an opportunity to be able to come to the library. So that's where those partnerships with schools actually allow us to reach kids who may not be able to come to a library building. So we have a couple initiatives going on with the schools right now. One of them is our Kindermobile, where we've had a bookmobile for quite a few years, and it was mainly used for special events, for some specific stops in apartment complexes. We kind of rethought that whole bookmobile concept last year and decided that it would really help us to be able to get books to students within the schools. And so we turned it into what we call the Kindermobile. And on a monthly basis, there are, I believe, 32, I'm not sure what the number is this year. I think last year there were 32 kindergarten classrooms throughout Salinas. So on a monthly basis, we visited each of those kindergarten classrooms. All the kindergartners got to come on to the Kindermobile, pick out their own book, check it out. And so initially when we started this, we thought, well, out of those 32, maybe 20 something will decide that they want the Kindermobile to visit. For some of them, it may be just kind of hard to schedule, and no, everyone wanted it. So we did end up visiting all 32 kindergarten classrooms, and we'll continue that this year. I believe we checked out around, just in the second semester of last year, we checked out over 3,000 books to kids from the Kindermobile. So with being able to do the whole school year this year, obviously we hope to be able to double that. We'll be doing our kindergarten library campaign as usual, to be able to get every kindergartner a library card throughout Salinas. And then we've also been able to kind of extend our partnership through a pilot program with a program that's sponsored by the Pacific Library Partnership in concert with the California State Library, called the Student Success Initiatives. And that initiative is really structured to help libraries build those partnerships with schools, and to provide some of the training and the structure and the materials to be able to do that. And we've been just thrilled that our school systems have been very enthusiastic about that. And so we were able to get some additional grant funding this year to be able to start a pilot program with 4 Salinas City elementary schools, with Sherwood, El Gavilan, Los Padres, and Roosevelt. Schools, 3 of which where we have homework centers right now. And so every child who attends one of those 4 schools will be getting a virtual library card. So we'll load their student data into our library card registration system, and they'll use their student number to be able to check out materials.
Great.
And we'll also deliver materials to their school. So a student can search our catalog, find that great book that they want, put a hold on it using their student library card, and we'll do deliveries once a week to their school, so they'll be able to get that. So as I said, that gets books in the hands of kids who may not be able to get to our libraries, and that's really exciting for us.
That's elementary and middle school.
Elementary school to start out with. And
Okay.
that's something, again, this is a pilot project with these 4 schools this year, just within the Salinas City Elementary School District. We really hope to be able to grow that initiative, to be able to serve all of our school districts and from K through 12 eventually. But we want to concentrate on best practices to start out with and really get the structures in place where we know we can do it and we know we can continue the service.
Right. The different school districts, are you initiating these programs, or are they coming to you?
We are
Joanne?
initiating these programs, and I think a lot of that comes from that student success initiative that the state library has been spearheading. But I think some of this also comes, some of the enthusiastic reception that we get is from the fact that schools are not able to fund school libraries as well as they might like to be able to fund, because so much of their funding is going to direct student learning activities. And so school libraries, like all libraries, are suffering with funding. And so being able to work together makes us all stronger.
Right. I was just thinking, like the Steinbeck Library is not too far away from Salinas High School.
Exactly.
And so could there be more of a synergy, a collaboration where whatever space they have, which is probably very limited for the high school, is now the library of choice is the Steinbeck, and you create an agreement and, more, assistance for students. And a better learning environment after school hours, etc. So is that possible?
It certainly is, and for example, I think the online homework help is actually probably used, and in my experience, much more by high school students. And I've worked with that program in other libraries before, and some of our most enthusiastic users were high school and middle school math and science teachers who, just constantly talk to their students about using that particular program, probably instead of calling them at 8 o'clock at night to ask a question, it's like, use this instead. So I see that as a way to kind of open the door for high schools and middle schools to be able to kind of form that relationship, and then to be able to see what happens after that.
Right, because that's a large population.
It is. And that's actually when we start seeing library usage fall off, is in those middle school to high school years. So being able to have those programs, for example, like Digital Nest at Cesar Chavez Library, where we weren't seeing heavy high school usage of that library at all.
Right.
In spite of the proximity to Alice Hall High School. Now that the Digital Nest is there, we are seeing a lot more usage of that library by high schoolers. We're also working on a app for teens that's actually going to be designed by teens for using the library. And so, we asked a group of teens, why do you think teenagers don't use the library? They came back with a whole list of things that they saw. And then, one of the ideas that they had was, you should create an app that would really encourage teens to be able to use your services more. And so we've got a group of teens that are actually working with some Digital Nest staff right now to be able to develop that app. So it's a hard crowd to deal with sometimes, but you really do have to be able to create those spaces and those services where teenagers want to be.
So we're going to be looking at Library Connect.
Yes, exactly.
That's great. So, that's sort of the digital move to engage different ages of youth, and they're so interconnected in one way or the other, from the time they get up to the time they go to bed, with some digital or media online, mobile devices. I mean, their lives are really intertwined, almost
yes,
integrated
yes.
with these.
So if there's nothing on their phone that connects them with you,
Right.
then that connection is probably not going to be present, especially for teenagers. And you know, that is another one of those things that we, as I said before, not every kid is going to come to the library. Not every teenager or adult needs to come to the library too.
Right.
It's great that we're investing in buildings and places for people to physically be and connect socially. But there are so many services that we offer. Our digital collection has been growing and growing and growing over the past 2 years, and the number of people who are using that digital collection continues to grow too. So it's okay that you may never come into the library, that you may just be searching our Overdrive or Hoopla collection for music to listen to, or an audiobook to listen to, or an ebook to download. So as yes, libraries are important for people to come to, but the services that they offer can be offered without people having to come directly to the library.
I have to ask you this. The librarians really have to be excited with the new library.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So is there sort of a, I want to work at El Gabalon sign-up sheet?
Yeah. Well, you know, the
How do
great
you work with
thing, I tend to have the philosophy that if you work for the Salinas Public Library, you work for the whole Salinas Public Library. You don't just work for the Cesar Chavez Library or John Steinbeck or El Gabalon. So there's some of our staff members, especially our entry-level customer service staff, that may be assigned primarily to one library to offer customer service, though they still may go around to different locations every once in a while as well. But most of our librarian staff rotate throughout the library system. They may have a home library that they do more of their public service work, but their programming they do for the entire library system. So they will all get an opportunity to work at El Gabalon.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're happy with that.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best use of very valuable resources, the staffing and knowing the different libraries, so that, you know, if you serve in one, you could also serve in another. And you know, that way they get to see different parts of the city.
Exactly.
Right? Which is also very good.
And figure out that different parts of the city do have different needs.
Right.
And so when we're designing programs and services, we need to keep the entire city in mind, instead of just focusing on one library and then realizing, well, that would work really well here,
Right.
but you know, maybe not so much over there. So it's important that they really have that citywide perspective.
Right. So is there anything else we need to be looking for from library and community services? You have a lot going on. New library, new programs, new partnerships. Exciting.
It is exciting, and I'm sure there are so many more other things that my staff have planned that I don't even really know about yet, that I'll find out about very, very soon. But probably El Gabalon is one of our most exciting things that we've got coming.
Right. Well, congratulations to you and the
Thank
staff
you.
on that. That's really exciting. That's going to be a huge, you know, brand new asset for the city in different ways. And the building's one thing, but the programming and the services really will make the difference, it seems to me. Great to have you back on the show,
Thank
Carrie
you.
Ann.
Great to be
you
here.
always bring something new, which is great.
Well,
So-
we always have something new going on, so I
Yeah.
appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll have you back on and looking at some of these programs and initiatives that you have with the schools and other entities. That's great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ray.
All right.